All right, guys, we're back today. We got the returning owner of Grappling Industries, Dave Aguzzi, back for another talk with me. Before we do that, let me go through a couple sponsors, and then I'll get Dave on here, and we'll get chatting about jiu-jitsu and business and all that fun shit. So first and foremost, NoGiNation.com. Go check them out. They're home of the Fuck the IBJJF rash guards, the Baby Yoda rash guards, pretty much, stuff that can get us sued, but that's what we like to do. So make sure you go check that out. We got a lot of great shirts, rash guards. We got the Wicked Warrior coffee on there and all the other good stuff that you can get. We've been doing a lot of giveaways and stuff like that. So make sure you're watching, commenting, and asking questions on the stream because at the end we may do another giveaway. NoGiNation.com. And then CBDYumi.com. They are my favorite brand of CBD. Go to www.cbdyumi.com/Starlord and you'll save some money and I'll make some money. But big fan of CBDYumi because they partner up with Seth Daniels and Fight to Win to host the Subversive Team Jiu-Jitsu events, which are always fun to watch. And they also really support the vets. They send out a lot of CBD products to wounded vets and vets who are coming back and trying to live a normal life. So great company to support there. And honestly, some of the best CBD products I've had to date, specifically the Godfather CBD is some of my favorite. But last but not least, we got Liberty Ammunition, www.libertyammo.com. And you can use code STARLORD there to save yourself 10% off. Again, I carry their 9mm ultralight. They got a lot of great defensive ammunition, and I'm actually going to the range tomorrow and hopefully going to try out some of the 45 in my 1911. So, the ultralight is half the weight of a traditional 124 grain 9mm round with twice the velocity. So, big fan of them, and overall, they're just a great company local here in Bradenton. So, go ahead and give them a follow. Go get some ammo there, and keep yourself safe during these trying times. But I'm going to go ahead and get Dave on here now, and we'll just start this chat. Dave, you laughing at me for my my ammo stuff over there?
No, it was a funny lineup of sponsors. First, we had the Fuck the IBJJF rash guard that you were pitching, and then we went into ammo and went into CBD. It was quite. It covered a lot of industries right there.
Yeah, I mean, dude, look at me. I got a lot of interests. I like to piss people off. I like to keep my body healthy and defend my family. So it works out. I'm actually working on getting a whiskey sponsor. They're
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, that would be a good idea too.
Yeah. So all the shit that works out for me.
Yeah, we don't see many like CBD companies in Canada where I'm from, to be honest. Like we have legalized marijuana, so they're really pitching or really proposing like the THC products, but not really. You don't really see that many CBD products. Like there's some CBD pre-rolls like available at the dispensary, but they don't really have like a CBD product, like you can't go into like the convenience store Depannard and find a CBD product. And also like ammo in Canada is much different than the United States, as of course. So it's not like you can just walk into somewhere and be like, I have this gun, can I get this ammo for it?
Yeah, down here you can walk into a Walmart and be like, you can buy yourself an AR-15 at a Walmart and then buy yourself some ammo too. It's a little crazy. And I know you guys just had that unfortunate tragedy in Nova Scotia. So, I mean, I'm guessing the gun laws are going to get even tighter up there in Canada.
Well, they're already tight, so I don't think it's really going to change that much, to be honest. We're just like everyone else. We still have this type of stuff happening. We're not like
it's gonna happen everywhere.
We're not protected from that.
Everyone views Canada as this like idyllic place where nothing goes wrong, and it's just unfortunately not true. The whole world's going a little crazy.
Oh, stuff goes wrong everywhere, to be honest.
Yeah,
but that Nova Scotia story, for those that haven't checked it out, they should. It's kind of intense, but unfortunately it happened. So. How many rash guards have you sold of the IBJJF? Like, fuck the
a pretty good amount. I'd have to. I have a partner who does all the back end stuff because I'm more of the loud, boisterous face of the company, and I like to have someone who's a lot smarter than me take care of all the numbers and the distribution and stuff like that. So she's got all the numbers, but it's done pretty well, which is a little surprising, but I guess not so much when you look at the industry and how pissed off everybody is with the IBJJF.
It should become like the new Globetrotters logo.
I know, and that stuff just totally disappeared. I mean, this whole Corona stuff kind of shut everything down, but
Oh yeah,
like
like
all that stuff.
it was weird, eh? It was like the topic of jujitsu. Like everyone wanted to talk about the Globetrotter IBJJF thing. Who is Timmy? Everyone wanted to know who is Timmy.
Yeah,
And then like overnight, it was just like irrelevant. You know, without jujitsu, like this topic becomes irrelevant in a way.
yeah, I know.
Doesn't matter what doesn't matter what affiliation you are when you compete. There's no competition, so you can't even train at the gym, right?
Yeah, it's crazy because it's almost like I mean, obviously it's horrible that we can't train and all this stuff's happening, but in a weird way, it's kind of bringing everybody back together and kind of getting everybody on the same side. Like we just want to train, you know?
Yeah, that's the gif I've gotten from a lot of people is they just really want to go back to the gym right now, and it's kind of like it turned out jujitsu actually was very important to a lot of people,
Yeah,
more than I thought it would be. Actually, I thought it would be like a hobby for a majority of people, but it turns out even being just a hobby for a majority of people, it was like something that took their mind off of a lot of other things from work or family or whatever was going on in their lives.
yeah, 100%, dude. And last time you were here, we talked about the mental health crisis that was going to come out of this as well. And I mean, I've heard from a lot of my students, a lot of people. I mean, I put it out there all the time. If someone needs to talk, I'm always here to listen. But a lot of people are really struggling with. I mean, it's just that lifestyle. You know, when you're training a couple times a week, you're staying active. When you're sedentary, I mean, it's hard to one, be alone, and two, get out of your routine and not have your exercise. You know, I mean, obviously we can all go walk around and stuff like that, but a lot of people are like me, and I just fucking hate anything else that's not jujitsu.
I think you can see the eagerness a little bit as well because like some states are putting out like the phases of how they're gonna like reopen their economy
Yeah,
in individual states, and then some of the states, I think like Atlanta or not Atlanta,
Georgia.
Georgia,
Yeah.
of course. They said that they were going to open up on Friday, and part of
Yep.
the opening up on Friday would include gyms. So
Hmm.
you see everyone in jiu-jitsu go absolutely crazy, right? They're like, "Oh my God, Georgia's going to open up gyms on Friday," but I don't think the definition of gyms in Georgia is Brazilian jiu-jitsu as much as it is weightlifting gyms or
Yeah.
like there's that small print that says you need to follow social distancing conditions, you need to keep sanitation. You can keep a jiu-jitsu gym as clean as possible, but there's no social distancing that happens in
No.
there. I think I think Lachlan Gaio said like maybe a month ago that if jiu-jitsu gyms, like if the politicians knew what jiu-jitsu was, do you think jiu-jitsu would be at all even open right now? And clearly the answer is no. Um, so I think like a lot of people in jiu-jitsu are getting like really like eagered up or like stemmed up because they see this idea of like gyms are going to open soon, but I think they're kind of confused about the word gym. Like gym is somewhere you go to lift weights or do cardio or rowing or whatever you want, but the martial arts gym is not really the same, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. Like a bunch of my students saw that and they hit me up and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna be phase one." I'm like, "Yeah," until they realize what we're doing, and then we're gonna be like the very last thing. And I mean, Seth has like a very negative perspective on everything that's going on. Like he has a view that the industry is never gonna be the same. All the gyms are gonna be closed. But something he says that I totally agree with is jujitsu gyms and live events are probably going to be the last thing that opens up from this. So like we need to start buckling up and pivoting and being ready for the long haul that will be eventually reopening.
I agree with Seth to a certain degree there. I mean, I wouldn't say that everything is going to change. Like I
Yeah.
remember, I listened to the podcast. Clearly, I'm a fan. So he was saying like the pricing was changed, the crowd was changed, the marketing would change. I don't think a lot of this will change. I think there's a huge part of the population, as we've seen on social media and such, that they really want this to be over with. They want to go back to their normal lives. They want to act like nothing ever happened. So those people are going to go amongst doing everything exactly the same. There's especially certain states that everyone believes that. And then there's places where people might want to wait to see how the second wave go, see how the third wave goes. Those people might be a little bit different as the way we have to market to them or when they're going to get included back into the system like they were before. But as far as everything changing, Um, I don't know. I would agree with him though that we're going to be one of the last. I would say that large event gatherings, like anything like Seth does, that there's like a 500 to 1,000 people in a room watching something, and they're all close together, and they're all going up to the bar at the same time to get drinks at intermission. I think that's going to be open last. The same with our tournaments at Grappling Industries, like running 12 mats now and having 24 athletes on the mats like rubbing up against each other. I think that is also going to be one of the last things open. um, but then again, some states are moving faster than other states. Some countries are moving faster than other countries. Some countries are just not moving at all. I can tell you based off of what I've read and heard and discussed with the Australians is like, even with their cases being lower than most of the first worlds, they have no interest in coming back right away. So I hear Australians throwing around the number like 6 months, whereas I hear some Americans throwing around the number of 1 month. You know, so to us, it's kind of like what Seth is saying. I guess is it's a waiting game.
Yeah.
You don't know how long you're in the hall for, but at the same time, you can just kind of like, you just have to read up on it, I guess, and just wait your turn. I mean, people are going to be eager to jump back into it eventually. They haven't completely forgotten about what makes them happy.
100%. And it's kind of like when all this thing was starting, you don't want to be the first gym to close, and you also don't want to be the last gym to close. And the reopening, you don't want to be the first person to reopen. You also don't want to be the last person to reopen. Like the sweet spot's all somewhere there in the middle. It's really going to be interesting because the other thing I'm starting to realize now is in this age of fake news, it's so difficult now to like really find out what's going on because there's reports that like Sweden is not doing anything different and they're having similar results, but they have a smaller population size in the US. And like, it really makes you realize that no one answer is correct in almost anything, you know?
No, you're kind of spot on there. Like Sweden does have some social distancing rules they put into place like a while ago that we haven't really discussed, but for the most part, they really are chasing that herd immunity concept. Mm-hmm. Whereas other parts of Europe are really just completely locked down. When you're looking at places like Spain, France, even Ireland. Dublin was the first Grappling Industries event we canceled of all our events. I was in London at the time at the British Museum, and my phone started getting blown up from my colleague in Europe. And it was that European politicians, not European, Irish politicians were declaring that they were going to close schools, close gathering events down to like 50 people that day. This was on like March 12th or 13th or something like that. And clearly, like our Ireland event, our Dublin event is quite big. It's like maybe 600, 700 competitors, plus the 600, 700 spectators to go along with it. And it's clearly like we were not going to surpass any of that. Like we were not going to stay under it. I mean, so that was the first event we got canceled. So, I mean, it all started stemming from there. Like clearly, like you were saying, some people didn't want to be the first to close. But I kind of identified right off the bat, being in Europe, that the moment this hit the United States, their reaction was going to be very similar to that of Europe. And I mean, I actually think the United States acted before Australia. Australia was one of the last places to act on this because the last event we canceled, we were about to have it. Like we were like 2 days short of it. We were about to load the truck, send their truck out to, I think it was Brisbane in Australia. And then it got canceled at the last second because of the venue and new gathering laws. But I think like a lot of this stuff aged badly, like people like myself, especially, we didn't want to cancel our events at first, but we were kind of like put in that position. And then there became like this crowd thing that happened. Like, I don't know if you've talked about this with other people, but it's almost like there's a lot of people that came on the internet that normally were quiet and dormant on the internet that now suddenly they were going to be, I don't like using the word, but white knightish in a way where they were going to call you out. They were going to tell you their opinion. They were going to criticize you. They were going to start like a little riot against you on the internet. And suddenly your perspective of why you wanted to hold the event or why it was important to you to hold the event was not important to these people because these people thought of you as a danger. I remember like maybe a month ago, like someone on the internet called me selfish and saying that I was trying to turn the United States into Italy. and like people were going after her for saying that, and people were going after me because like we were basically moving events from March into July into August, and they were saying that we should just cancel it all. But that's not the way business works, unfortunately. You can't just cancel certain things that you have a lot invested in. And then referring to me as someone who's trying to turn the US into Italy, I mean, I don't know what that means, you know? Like, are you saying that I'm trying to get people sick, that I'm trying to actually kill people? Like, I think there's certain people that are crossing the lines with the stuff they're saying and they don't realize it. I think Tom DeBlas used to say that it's interesting about how people say stuff on the internet when they forget that, like, in the old days, you used to have to say the stuff to people's faces. I'm one of those people that believe that. I believe that a lot of people say stuff on the internet that they wouldn't say in person the same way. It's easier when you're hiding behind a keyboard, of course.
Yeah, dude, 100%. And people don't realize how small this community is, you know, like between competitors and just practitioners, we're not that big of a community. Like I know, and especially, you know, it too, like all the guys at the top, they talk, you know, so it's like you're out there doing these things. Everybody seems to be an expert right now in this kind of stuff, and they have these very strong opinions. It's really interesting to see the ones that are willing to kind of concede and like change their opinions with new data, and the guys who just get rooted in it. And it's going to be even more interesting, in my opinion, to see how it plays out for them after all this thing comes down, see how it ages, like you're saying.
That's interesting what you're saying, because like I read on Reddit, someone was saying that whenever they criticize the top jiu-jitsu athlete, the top jiu-jitsu athlete would respond back with something negative, like, oh, you're probably just at home on your couch eating potato chips. You don't get to criticize someone like me who's doing this shit.
Yeah.
And then the same person who had been criticized that way for criticizing athletes or asking them why they didn't do certain things a different way is also a scientist. And now they get to come back and say, well, you're not a fucking scientist. You don't get to tell me how I think or how I do my work. So how about you shut the fuck up and go back to the gym? So you're seeing like people think all of a sudden that since this is the major topic, this COVID-19, that everyone gets an opinion on it. And that's just not the fact either. Like there's clearly people who are better educated on the, like you were talking before about fake media, the fact that a lot of people can't even check the sources of what they're publishing. And they find, like, that's even crazier, that people find a need to actually go on the internet and share this stuff with their friends and the people that follow them, and they're like, hey, look what I read, you guys should read it too. And then I come from university as well, so I like the whole idea of like a bibliography is super important in university. Clearly you're going to fail without the bibliography. So the idea of like people just sharing stuff and it clearly being like these websites that have no standing, or these just absolute far-sighted media sites, it just makes no sense how people went from, you know, it happened starting probably 2016 with the elections in the United States, where like someone mentioned fake media, fake news, and then suddenly like there was this fake news thing that happened. Like all of a sudden, like fake news became a thing. Like anyone could start a blog, just like you could start a podcast, and you could publish whatever side you wanted to cover. You know, it didn't have to be true. It could just be your opinion. And if you add some fancy web URL to it, suddenly it looks kind of real to some people. And people believed it and they just ran with it. And it's just crazy, like how no one has a concept of let's check our source, you know, or let's just check Snopes, you know, or like even like you see a lot today because of the COVID thing. There's a lot of numbers involved in COVID. You see a lot of people putting up numerical memes. Basically, there's like these pictures and they have lots of numbers on it. Like one I saw a lot is like, oh, this is the number of deaths from this is the number of deaths from this is the number of deaths from this, and then the leading number of deaths is like abortions or something like that. It like clearly is not something that you can just prevent, you know. Like abortion technically, like that's a whole other topic of if you think it's murder or not. Like clearly you have a right to that as a woman. But then they would throw out the number of COVID deaths, and then people would share it, even though it was from like 2 months ago. So clearly people don't actually research the numbers. They just see a bunch of numbers. They think someone else did the research. Someone else didn't do the research. And next thing you know, you're sharing it too. And you're just adding to the problem of distributing this fake media. But then again, you're going to distribute anything that kind of cites with your point, right? A lot of people can't change their opinion, which is an interesting thing in itself, right? Like if you say to me that like apples are red and I say, well, apples are also green, and we disagree with each other, then clearly we're not open-minded enough to have a conversation about apples and their colors, right? But this is the way some people are, right? They just can't change their opinions. You see that mostly in religion
Mhm.
or in politics or certain things like that, but it really applies to everything. Like, as long as we're always coming up with new information that's proven right, then we should be able to change our opinions. And COVID is just one of those things where people, they have a pre-existing idea in their head that, like, oh, COVID is like the basic flu, or the mortality rate is 0.01%, and then they're just gonna shoot that out. They're just gonna shoot it, and they can't tell you where they learned it. They can't tell you where they got that information, but that's what they believe.
Yeah, they're just regurgitating it. And I think it's really, like you're saying, important to be able to take the facts and let that morph your perspective. And like you're saying, I mean, I lose a lot of respect for people who have these rigid opinions and they don't differentiate from them at all, and something I'm starting to see more and more of is people are going on Facebook and social media like, well, if you don't believe this, get off of here, delete me, or I'll delete you. And they're just creating these echo chambers where you just hear what you want to hear. And that's even more dangerous, especially with this kind of stuff. And I mean, we see it in the jiu-jitsu culture even more, because for some reason we have all these conspiracy theorists in jiu-jitsu and people who think they're fucking professionals. And it gets really scary because I see gym owners like isolating their students and saying, just fucking delete me and stuff like that if you don't believe this. And man, it's just not a good look for anyone.
What you're saying about echo chambers on Facebook is really there, to be honest. Like, we all expect Facebook to look like our Facebook that we have designed based on our friends that we have on our Facebook. But I tell you, if you click a couple of different people that you don't know, and you end up down that rabbit hole, you end up in interesting places. I remember one time, I think it was like a year or two ago, I clicked on someone who made a comment on my Facebook, and I let it, like, 3 Facebook pages later, I ended up on like this Muslim guy's Facebook page, and he was like really talking like some stuff about how he hated Jews, how he hated gays, how gays need to burn in hell. Like, it was like really, really intense stuff being thrown out on his Facebook page. And like tons of people who were commenting and agreeing with this. So it's interesting how we are exposed to what's on our Facebook, but the Facebook accounts that we're not friends with, like, they have a lot of different opinions, and they create this ecosystem, like you were saying. The whole idea of saying, like, if you don't agree with me, delete me or unfollow me, or just tell me so I can delete you. I mean, that idea is like, you want to live in a world where everyone is like, yes, man, yes, ma'am, I mean,
Yeah.
is that the problem? Like, why would you want to live in that world? Like the worst businesses are designed that way, where you're surrounded with people who are just like, yeah, that's a great idea, let's do it. But in your head, like, I was just making that up. It was a shitty idea. Why the fuck are you telling me to go along with it? I mean, so yeah, I mean, there's just like a lot of people seem to not have a concept of just having a rational conversation with themselves before they get into debates with other people. Like, I've gotten the luxury of, like, I wake up in the morning and I have coffee with my fiance, and we talk bullshit against each other from 2 different angles for like 2 hours, and we go over everything from bilingualism in Quebec to how to fix traffic to COVID. And not every time I'm right, but I'd rather lose in an argument with her in our privacy of our apartment than then go on the internet or have a debate with someone and be completely bashed because I had this pre-existing concept in my head that was just completely wrong, and I had never tried it, passed it by someone else. I mean, that's what you have to expect from people now.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a big part of it too is the fact that most people aren't well read and well traveled. Like, you're in a unique position where you operate a company on multiple continents and multiple different countries. So you get exposed to these different perspectives. A lot of people don't leave their hometowns. A lot of people don't, like you're saying, they have the echo chamber on Facebook. They stay with their flock. They don't really get to see the other perspectives of the world. And in the US, it's even more intense because you have these areas like LA and San Diego where it's very hard left, and then you go to Texas and Alabama and it's very hard right. And it's just, people aren't exposed to any of that.
Like in November and December, I spent like a month in Africa, across 5 African countries. We were basically camping in tents as we were moving country to country for a month. And there was an Oregonian with us as well. And the Oregonian was saying that, like, although they've been to like 60 countries, that they feel like all the states in the US are different countries.
Yeah,
And I have to agree with
me
that. Like,
too.
to be honest, like California is not like Utah, and Utah is not like New Jersey, and New Jersey is not like California, and you can go on with this for a while, like North Dakota or Oregon or Florida or Arkansas. They're all completely different. Um, so people have this idea, especially people who are not really like getting into many discussions with other people, where they believe what's happening in their state or what's happening in their region is the truth or the way it's supposed to be. They haven't wandered out and then seen how other people are doing stuff and then bring it back and be like, hey, why don't we do it this way? Maybe for this particular item. It's just the way people are, I guess, like, that's why I try not to get into that many conversations with people all the time. I'm one of those people that, as I'm getting older, I'm realizing that it's kind of a virtue to just be quiet. Like, there's a lot of patience involved in being quiet, but it really gets you further, to be honest, than just opening your mouth and saying maybe stuff that other people aren't going to agree with or might be controversial. I mean, I don't see the need to create controversial information unless you're trying to create a rivalry with someone, and where you're trying to use facts or information to actually win the rivalry. Kind of like what I've been trying to do in the past with Naga, for example.
Yeah. I mean, we both have done that, like you're a little bit older than I am, but I'm still a little brash now, but 5 years ago, I remember I'm getting all these memories from 5 years ago on Facebook, and it's just a super inflammatory post. So like, we've all been there, and we've seen you go at the IBJJF and now against stuff like that, but you're definitely right. There's a time and place. And I think that saying, you have 2 ears and one mouth for a reason, is definitely true, So, I mean, I know personally I've gotten a lot more where I'm just observing, and I will still go out there and say something brash if it's something I really believe, but there's got to be the right time and place for it.
And it's interesting too, because when you do say brash things against people, people think that you're absolutely mad at those people, that you hate them and stuff. Where like you just said, I've made lots of posts that were very brash and anti-inflammatory versus IBJJF and NAGA. But then again, like, I also think IBJJF and NAGA are great businesses. I think they have people who are very smart there. When Kip Kohler from NAGA does an interview, I listen to the interview. I kind of want to know what he thinks about it. We're both in the same industry doing things so similar. All the promoters are, like, you kind of want to know what's up with them. Yeah, of course I'm going to call out Kip Kohler and I'm going to call out NAGA as I was trying to approach and surpass them. But it was never like that they were garbage. I never said they were garbage. I never said they didn't have a legitimate business. I mean, clearly they have a legitimate business. They make millions of dollars of sales a year as well. I mean, they must be doing something right. They've been around for 20 years. And Kip loves to post about his fancy cars and his lake house and all these fancy things he owns, right? Clearly the guy has had some success along the way that, other promoters would want to replicate. But to just imagine that, like, because I said I don't think that what they've done here and here is good, I think it sucks, and you thinking that I think the whole product sucks, that's kind of the way it leads. You say something bad against someone, it kind of, like, to other people, it acts like you'd be willing to fight that person. And it's not the truth, man.
Yeah,
I almost
especially in our community.
I almost got there. I almost said that I almost got to the point where I challenged Naga to a super fight.
That would have been amazing. I mean,
it was like, I'll put up 20 grand, you put up 20 grand, and like the winner gives all the money, like 40 grand to the charity of their choice or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was too small niched for the bigger crowd of jiu-jitsu to care about it, to be honest.
No, I mean, I think it would have done well, but I definitely see what you're saying. That perspective makes a lot of sense. But I mean, yeah, we were talking about how different areas are handling this differently, So you run a business that is through, like we said, many countries and stuff like that, and you're paying really close attention to how different governments are running their disaster relief programs and their bailouts and shit like that. What do you think the U.S. is doing right, and do you have another country that you think is doing, like, as close to the best job as possible? Because there is no best way to handle this?
I actually really like what Canada has done with the personal level of it. That's if you're infected by COVID or you live with someone who has COVID or you can't go to work because of COVID itself, then you get unemployment benefits at a increased rate. But if you're laid off because of COVID, because your job is shut down or something, you're allowed to apply for $2,000 every 4 weeks, which up to 16 weeks. So it's about $8,000 Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
Over a 16-week period. You have to apply every 4 weeks. I like that much more than the current American system, the $1,200 stimulus check. I know Americans are working on several different bills right now. They did talk about the $2,000 monthly checks. It doesn't seem like that's going to pass. Yesterday, I read the bill that was in the States for free rent and free mortgage for a year. That's something a lot of Americans would probably like. You should check it out. Actually, it's pretty interesting. So I like what Canada is doing, where they give you $2,000. It's based like $500 a week.
Mm-hmm.
It's not supposed to match your pay or anything like that. I know other countries are doing 75%, 80% of your pay. They'll send it to you. You know, that's kind of similar again to like the $2,000 a month thing. I doubt, like, if you're making 100 grand a year, 300 grand a year, they're going to send you 80%. Clearly, it's not based for you either. As far as like a business standpoint, like I don't think anyone's really gotten it right. You know, there's just so many small businesses, medium businesses, and large businesses. And I also think there's a lot of anger in the US right now towards the bigger businesses and the whole concept of let's bail these guys out. There's this thing about like, why do we have to bail these people out? Why can't they take a loan like everyone else? Why can't they put their assets against the loans? Like the cruise industry or the airline industry. The fact is, like, these major companies, like, let's talk about cruises for just a second on this subject. I was invested in Royal Caribbean Cruises, for instance. Their stock went from $140 to about like $15 at one point. Now it's about $30, $40. But the point is, like, this company has 77,000 employees. To let this whole company just fail, let's say it goes to zero, the whole company goes bankrupt, they have to release everyone. That's 77,000 people in the world that don't have a job. Most of them are Americans. That creates a bigger problem than a company that has 20 employees that now don't have jobs. So I can understand the need to bail out companies like cruises. I can understand the need to bail out an airline where all these workers would not have a job next week. The problem is, it's just that small businesses don't have any guarantees. You know, not every small business has employees. Not every Brazilian jiu-jitsu gym has 10, 15, 20 employees. A lot of them only have one or two, to be honest. And we kind of know that a lot of jiu-jitsu gyms get instructors for free and they give them classes for free. That seems to be a thing in martial arts schools. So the idea, like, oh, these need to be bailed out on top of restaurants, on top of bars. The whole problem is there's just so many small businesses. I think the States recorded that there were like 55 million small businesses inside the country, which, you know, realistically, let's be honest, like, there's only about 200 million people that work in the States, right? So we're saying, what, 1 in 4 Americans own a small business? Really? Like, that's where the confusion starts. And then, like, so there was this PPP loan, right? The payroll protection loan, and it was like 349 billion available to anyone who applies, and then it ran out, right? And then there was a disaster loan, which was like 10,000, 20,000, up to 40,000 or something like that, forgivable. And then they had a data breach, which was announced today. Like, they're not very, the thing is, like, unless you get this, unless there's a reason for you actually to need it and get it, then it's probably not meant for you as well, right? If your company is doing like $30,000 of sales a year and has no employees and you apply for it, what makes you think that you deserve it? Like, maybe it does, like, support your living, but then again, we're not going to give you a loan to support your living. We're going to give you a loan if you have 10 employees or 200 employees, because we need to keep those people at work. That's what the loans were meant for on the business level. It was meant to keep people at work. The only problem I have with the PPP loan in the first place is, like, it's meant for like 10 to 12 weeks, right? So what if after 10 to 12 weeks the state isn't open or my business is not deemed essential or openable yet. It's like then I'm going to lay off my employees again because I'm not just going to keep paying out of my pocket again now that you've provided me a loan for the first part. I think Kip Kohler actually mentioned this on the Smooth Comp podcast. It's like, well, after 12 weeks, if I lay them off, then I have to pay back the loan, which is a disaster in itself. I have to agree with him on it. It's like, why am I going to keep my employees for 10 to 12 weeks, pay them with this loan, then it's forgiven, but then I have to pay for the employees myself again. What if it goes on for another 30 weeks? It could bankrupt some companies, especially the more employees you have. Grappling Industries has 15 employees, for example. We were paying them for the first couple of weeks, but now they're furloughed as well. The moment they come back, the moment we get restarted again, I would like to not only hire them all on the first day. That's the plan. I'm going to hire everyone on the first day, but I'd also like to give them raises and bonuses on the first day. I can't give them bonuses now because they're on unemployment or they're working other jobs. So it creates that problem where you're trying to now go around the state guidelines. But yeah, it's just tricky. Like, I mean, most people are just going to read the stimulus programs that are available to them, right? And then they're going to apply for them regardless. Like, one thing someone told me about all these loans or all these stimulus programs and assistance programs is how much fraud is going to happen in them. There's going to be a lot of fraud, a lot of people applying for stuff they don't deserve or don't need, and they're going to get it anyway. It's just kind of interesting how that's going to work.
Yeah, it's crazy. And you talked about data breach, and now you're talking about fraud of people applying for things they don't need. I mean, that was something that was going through my mind as well. And I totally agree with what you're saying, that we can't let big companies fail either. Like, it's going to be an even bigger problem when we're having hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people getting laid off from these massive companies because they're not getting bailed out. Like you're saying, it's a tricky situation. There's no right answer to it. The problem I have, because I mean, I was pretty pissed off for a while too, but mostly just because I don't need the small business loans and stuff like that, but I know a lot of people that do. You know, I know a lot of people who have employees that they're having to lay off and stuff like that, and they're not able to get it too. And just the amount of time it's taking the government to, and it's just like a business. A bigger business is going to take a longer time to get something right than a smaller business that's quicker and agile can pivot. The U.S. is a huge government, you know, so it moves at a slow pace. It's not easy to turn a tank on a dime, you know, but a motorbike is much easier to turn around. The problem I'm starting to see, though, is the government is taking, and it's personally happened to me, like the government's taking tax payments, but they're not sending out their refunds. There's a lot of people that still haven't gotten a stimulus check, and I don't think that $1,200 is going to do anything anyways, but the government owes me $5,000, you know, and they're still taking tax payments from me. So it's like at a certain point, you have a large percent of the population that's out of work. They're not getting their unemployment. They're not getting the stimulus packages and stuff like that. It's a powder keg that if you light a match next to could cause some serious problems, you know?
No, I agree. Well, first, like the $1,200, like clearly it's not meant to do a lot.
Yeah.
It's just meant to be a stimulus, exactly what it says it is. Like people are supposed to get it. They're supposed to buy a stack of food, pay their rent, or buy something for entertainment, and then that money goes to someone else's hands. Then they spend it on it. Like everyone spending $1,200 at the same time is a stimulus, right? It creates some stimuli in the economy. But like you were saying, like some people do need the loans and they're not getting it. And then like you're saying at the same time, the government is still doing the government thing, but they're not doing it to the whole level they were doing it before. I think it's comparable. Like we can compare it to like past scenarios as well. If we're looking at the States, George W. Bush, for example, during Katrina, like he was to send all the small businesses in Louisiana checks. People in Louisiana were supposed to get checks as well, stimulus. The whole thing took 3 months to deliver. So we're just talking about one state, right? Like when we're talking about all the entire United States and the fact that you don't even have to apply for some of these, like the 1,200 stimulus, you don't have to apply for it. So we can also assume like Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, they got $1,200 checks too. You know, supposedly there was a way to log in and deny the stimulus check, but you know, no one's going to do that. Yeah. So I don't know. I think like the people who really needed it, there's other ways around it. like that's where it starts to become like the greedy type of way of like, do you want to keep your business open? Okay, let's grind. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Um, there's always going to be loans available. Loans are still available. Like the interest rate for loans are low as well right now, 0%. Um, it's tricky because it's like most business owners, like whatever step you are in growing your business, you kind of have to take like 10 steps back right now and go back to those roots. Like I went back to selling lifetime passes, something that I don't like to do, but for Grappling Industries we needed to raise capital, because there's a lot of things that are still going to be taken from our bank accounts, like truck leases, taxes are still due, of course. Like these things have to get paid. So if there's no cash flow, because we had to refund all the future registrations of all the future services you were going to provide, then I still needed to increase some type of reserves. So although we had reserves, we're trying not to dip into those reserves. We're trying to cover it. We're trying to cover employees for a couple more weeks. In that case, it's like we have to go back to the old route of, okay, let's do hardcore email blasting. Let's do lots of Facebook social media postings. Let's try to negotiate instead of just sell at what price we had. Because our lifetime pass is out at 700. And like we were willing to take 500, 550. Because at this point we felt like we don't know how long this is going to last, but we need to make it last. So if we can bring in another $50,000, $60,000 in lifetime passes right now, that could cover us for that gap maybe, and then we could have something left over maybe, or we can make it through the gap and then we would have to fundraise again. But the whole thing is like we were doing stuff we didn't like. We don't want to sell lifetime passes. We want to sell tournaments clearly. But it's the fact that we had to do it because we don't have any other options. This is where I'm seeing like a lot of people like still haven't completely taken the step to it. They're like their sales have dried up, but they haven't found a way to replace those sales. Even though there's a way to replace those sales for most people, if they look at the way they started their business, like whenever it was, they did things differently. Now it's the time to do those things again. It's just a hard time, right? Like asking entrepreneurs, especially, to go back 2 years and do things like you were doing before, which are always harder than the futuristic ways of doing things. Then, like, a lot of people are probably like they're stressed out, they're fed up. One thing I've been talking a lot with my fiance a lot is like most people just have to get a grip. I think most people have to like get rid of social media for a week, like, and just get a grip, calm the fuck down, and like realize what they have to do for themselves. I can tell you that some of my employees already got second jobs just for the time being. One of my drivers, who also started running events by himself, since he can't run events right now, he's working at Amazon. So there's options available for those people. Like I even considered it too. I don't know when tournaments are coming back, and I'm in a great condition right now. I don't have to work. I don't for a while, to be honest. But man, I'm just bored, man. I'm one of those people that love to work, But the thing is, as well, is like unless I want to go work at Amazon or a grocery store or a pharmacy, I can't go work at I can't go be an executive somewhere else right now. Those options are not really available either. But at the same time, it's like I kind of want to do something. I just, I think a lot of people will be left in that condition where they're going to have to get a second job to support their first job again, and then once everything balances back off, they can come back to the first job maybe. But
yeah, I think it's a good point. I think a lot of people are going to have to go out there and just like you, I've considered it as well. Like not that we financially need it, but just because I do not like sitting here doing nothing. Like
yeah.
it's very I don't want to say demanding, but it's hard, dude. Just sitting around not doing anything when you're used to running nonstop and running multiple businesses. But I mean, I do really believe that this is going to be a time that a lot of creativity and new things come out of. This is going to be, we're all stuck at home. We got nothing better to do than create and to kind of work on ourselves, and it's going to be hard, but these hard times will make harder people and make everything better long term.
Yeah, there's going to be some ideas that come out of this whole thing that we're going to see maybe produced a year after the COVID thing ends, that people came up with the idea during COVID, that it's going to make, first of all, it's going to make people's lives easier. It's going to make their lives easier. It's going to make their businesses better. I know we've been working a lot on the back end of Grappling Industries during the COVID thing, like taking care of all the laundry list. So like we don't have to do it when we come back up with a bunch of work on our plates. But at the same time, I think like a lot of people, like I think right now, like this is a good chance for people who are not in the worrisome position. Like they're gonna work on new stuff, right? They're gonna get new hobbies. They're gonna learn how to bake bread or bake desserts and stuff. Like I made tiramisu yesterday. I spent like $25 on ingredients to make tiramisu, for fuck's sake. But at the same time, like there's of course those people who are like they don't have the choice, right? They don't have the choice to just sit at home for a month and wait for everything to come back. Because like the fact is, I've always said this because I take great pride in being financially literate. A lot of people are actually built to bill. Like it's quite shocking, the number. A lot of people don't have $1,000 for an emergency. Most people don't have actually savings. Most people have debt. I think like half the amount of Americans, like maybe actually less than half, 40% of Americans have debt from overspending, overliving, living to their means, and then something like COVID happening, and then you're really like exposed. It's tricky, man. Like I think those people really need to like take a step back and realize like, is my lifestyle sustainable? And like right now we're seeing a lot of people's lifestyles were not sustainable. I think those people whose lifestyles were not sustainable, they have to not only fix that, but then they have to become literate on the finances and concept of it.
Yeah, and last time you were here, we talked about this is a financial literacy test, and even more so now, government bailouts aren't coming through. Maybe your stimulus check's not coming through. This is a huge test, and like you're saying, a lot of people do live beyond their means. And luckily, like for us, we were really into like paying off debt before this. Like we still have debt. Everybody will have debt for a certain period of time until they become debt free. But I can't stress that enough. This is like a huge reminder that once this is over and everything starts coming back to normal, the economy starts rebounding, debt is slavery, in my opinion. Like it's very difficult to make it through any kind of emergencies when you're paying X amount every month out to debt.
A good example I like to use for debt is the example of the credit card, right? Like when I was really, really young, when my parents first told me about what a credit card was, or when I first applied for my first credit card, it was this concept that like I carry this thing and I use it in case of like really big emergencies. Mm-hmm. For some reason, I don't have money to take the bus home. Maybe I can use the credit card to buy my bus tickets at the service station or something like that. And then along the way, the credit card became like this thing that it replaced the debit card. Let's put everything on it. And then like, oh, I only have to make a minimum payment on it every month, or this and that. That's not the way it works. Yeah. Okay. It's like, first of all, I'm debt free. I don't owe anyone fuck all. And that's a very important thing in my life, because when I wake up in the morning, no one's coming to me for asking me for anything. So that's kind of important. It means that like everything that I have, I get to keep now. And I don't owe that back to someone for something. You see a lot of people like going crazy with financing for the same reason, right? Like, oh, I can pay less for this item and just pay it over time. Yeah, you could do that. It's useful on certain things like cars and houses. But then again, also how affordable the car or the house you got also plays a huge importance in this. Yeah, I just think that people don't really have a good grip on their finances, to be honest, or the concept of debt. I've always had the concept of if the bill comes in the mail, if I have the money to pay it, I pay it off right then. I don't want to know about, oh, I can pay it in 30 days. I'm going to forget about it in 30 days, man. Yeah. Like we just started accounting on Grappling Industries, and like Grappling Industries is a medium-sized business. It's not small, but it's not large. We don't have 500 employees, but we're also not like $100,000 of sales a year. We're about $5 million, $6 million a year. In that concept, like basically the entire thing, I'm kind of forgetting what I'm talking about right now, but like the idea is like, yeah, I just forgot what I was
I mean, you are like financial literacy and accounting for Grappling Industries, but if it doesn't come back to you, I got another question.
Yeah, I'll come back to later.
Yeah, so you talk about being debt free. Like, did you have a good background with your parents teaching you about financial literacy, or is it something that you had to learn yourself?
Well, first, actually, since I'm from Quebec in Canada, I don't have to pay $20,000 to $40,000 for university, right? University semesters here cost less than 3 grand.
Yeah.
So I think my whole university degree costs less than 15, to be honest. Just that alone changes it. Um, the idea never hit me like, oh, I want to buy this thing and then I want to owe money on it my whole life. I've been in debt a couple times when I was younger, like 16, 18, 20, but never again like after that. My parents, not the same, to be honest. My parents are more happy for debt. It is what it is. But I just never liked the idea of debt. I never liked the idea of like having like 30 grand in debt and having to pay it back. I feel like it's a burden, to be honest.
Oh yeah, 100% is. Now, I mean, like I've been in the opposite hand. Like I got into a lot of debt growing up. Like I've been to the point where I've defaulted on credit cards and cars and stuff like that when I was very young, and then I rebuilt the credit to the point where I didn't have any debt anymore. And then I got married, and my wife had a different, like you're saying, in the U.S. we don't have, the amenities that Canada has, where the university is so much cheaper. Like she's got a master's degree, so she had student loans and all that fun stuff. So, I mean, I do really believe that there's a difference in culture here in Canada. I mean, there's obviously still people in debt in Canada, but I do
Of
believe
course.
there's a little bit higher level of financial literacy and a little bit different view on debt. Like you were saying, coming up, credit cards were like in case of emergency. Down here, like it's like everybody put that shit on there, 0% interest for everybody. Oh, don't worry about it now. You'll get it down the line. And I think people look more at the minimum payments than they do the overall debt. And if you ask how many people can calculate interest on their debt to see, like, give you the total of what it's going to cost you over the period of time, I'd say probably less than 1 in 5 people can do that.
Oh, we're trying to look at like buying a house in like maybe 2 years. We want to live downtown in the apartment that we're living in right now for 2 years, and then like another 2 years, and then we want to move back to like the South Shore of Montreal, like the
Yep.
suburbs, and buy something nice out there. And like we've already been doing this for about 6 months, where we're doing the mortgage calculator. How much is our down payment? This is how much the loan is going to be, and how much is the interest on that loan. So, for example, if you're buying something like $1 million house and you put 25% down, the loan is still going to be $750,000. There's going to be some interest on that over 25, 30 years. So it becomes a game of like, how much down payment do I have to be to get that mortgage rate to something like intriguing where it's affordable per month, but also how many years on top of that is interest. And usually there's like 4 or 5 years of your mortgage is just paying off interest payments. So that is where like people, like you were just saying, like people aren't aware of how much they're paying on this stuff. Like I know some people that are paying like $1,000 to $2,000 a month on their credit cards to pay down their debt, and like of the $2,000 they're putting on their credit card, like 700 of it is just paying off interest from the past. I mean, it's
Yeah.
fucking nuts, man. Like, I mean, how did this happen? Like usually it's not because you lost your job and you had expenses, to be honest. Like, I mean, look, most people have lost their jobs right now. Like, if you ask me what I'm spending my money on right now, it's food.
Yeah.
What else do I have to spend my money on right now? It's not a time to change my furniture, like it's not a time to do gardening. Um, so I think it is really like these types of things, especially finances, it's an individual to individual concept.
Yeah, 100%. And it comes down to everybody individually, like you're saying. So, a little bit more on what you're doing. What are you doing right now? Because I know you're a high functioning individual. What are you doing to keep your mind straight during all this? Like exercise, routine, anything? I know you said you debate your fiance every morning and stuff like that. Uh,
Yeah. Well, like I used to. So for the first 30 years of my life, I actually lived at my parents' house. It's a really big advantage when you're starting a business, to be honest. I have a great relationship with my parents too. To those that like question it, living in your parents' basements and stuff like that. But so I had a great relationship with my parents. I clearly really love my parents. They were the people that were always showing up at the tournaments first, right? So I would wake up every day. Both my parents are retired. They're both like in their late 60s. My dad's in his early 70s. My dad is working on construction projects, trying to build like condo buildings. So my mom is home in the morning. So I got to debate her every morning on American politics because she loves watching like CNN and Fox at like 6, 7 in the morning. So then I come upstairs and then I get into a debate with her. So when we moved like downtown from my parents' house, um, like I needed to replace that debating part of waking up in the morning and just finding something to be angry at, I guess. I go to sleep like late, so then when I wake up early in the morning, I just have this anxious, let's debate something. So me and her, like, we stay like intellectually like challenged that way in the morning. We debate for like 2 3 hours. Then from there, like, to stay like in shape, it's weird. It's really hard to stay in shape as well. She did jujitsu for a while, got her like 4 stripes, didn't get her blue belt yet. I guess she didn't want to be a blue belt that left. So we're like walking the dogs, running the dog, hiking the dog. But even then, that's like only so demanding, right? I know she got Ring Fit for like Nintendo, for Nintendo Switch, so she likes that a little bit. But myself, I just like, I don't know, man. To be honest, I don't know how to stay in shape right now. It's just I'm so challenged between like the business and between like the quarantine and between like all the new information coming out every day. I want to stay on top of it. That like
Yeah, stop right now. I'm right there with you, dude. Like,
I don't have a belly or anything, but at the same time, it's like,
I fucking do. I mean, I always do, but but like, dude, at the same time, it's like when you're grappling. For me, like running a gym, I train twice a day, and then I do some strength and conditioning there too. You cannot replace that with walking and lifting weights. Like, it just doesn't. And for me, mentally, it's like that's the only time my brain shuts off. I know you were talking about like getting a job earlier, just to like keep your mind active and like because you're bored out of your mind. Like, rolling is the only time my brain has zero going on. So between
you're right, man. Like when you're rolling, it's kind of like you're not thinking about anything else besides the task at hand.
Yeah, and I know like we're both entrepreneurs and shit like that, and we both do jujitsu. It's very difficult balance now because you're talking about the desire to get a job, the desire to train, the desire to stay in shape. And when all this stuff is falling apart, like, it's just, to me, like, this is what I'm doing to stay sane. Like, I really feel like a lot of these people who have the opportunity to work are getting a little bit of that advantage where they can go out and be productive and have that sense of accomplishment. I feel like that sense of accomplishment and sense of like providing is starting to slowly die for a lot of people,
Yeah, I think so. I think the whole sense of providing is the most important thing right now for a lot of people. I think it was before. It's something that a lot of people take a lot of pride in.
Yeah.
Like I see memes like about how like I provide for my whole family. That should make me essential. Clearly, it's a play on words. Like, you're not essential just because you provide for your family. Essential is the type of work you do. But it goes to show that a lot of people who are the providers for their families or the breadwinners for their families, they feel kind of like neglected by the whole thing. Like they're losing purpose in a way. 2 weeks ago on like 60 Minutes, they did a segment on like mental health and how the whole going to work, like for example, for us, going to work during the day, or having these little debates during the day with our friends and family, going to the gym at night or during the morning as well. It's a routine, and routines are they're very good for our mental health. Once the routine falls apart and we don't know what to do with ourselves or what we do with certain days anymore, like on a Wednesday or Thursday, that's where like people just start to get depressed, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I see it a lot. So if you were to give advice to someone who's trying to rebuild their routine, say like they're an entrepreneur and they're at home and they're debating between getting a job or doing something else, like if they, I don't know, it's kind of a loaded question because like at a certain point, finances come involved too. But like, what is your advice to someone to stay just kind of mentally healthy during this time and not, because I'm seeing more and more people that have to close their business and then they're immediately killing themselves. And I see it every day on Facebook and stuff like that. It's extremely sad. So what is your advice to someone like that besides obviously talk to somebody?
Well, I think talking to someone only goes so far, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Like, I mean, once that other person's not there to talk to anymore, you're like you're stuck with the same way you felt inside, right?
Yeah.
Like replacing the whole routine is really tricky. Um, I knew someone a while back, like 5 years ago, who's really addicted to drugs, for example, and getting them off of drugs in itself. The whole thing I remember about that person is it was routine based for them, right? They would wake up, they would get high, they would get high at lunch, they would get high at dinner, and they would be like super high throughout the whole fucking night to deal with, right? In that case, like taking the drugs out, you're left with this empty routine of like, what do I do with myself? So most of us don't have as heavy a situation where we wake up and we have to get high, right? Most of us wake up and we either get the kids ready or we go to work or we start preparing what we had planned for the day, right? So we can see already that like there's a lot of emphasis on trying to replace routines once there's some type of negativity like drug addiction or depression occurs. Um, Fixing the routine just means like finding things that make you happy, right? It can be like walking the dog at two parts of the day that are always the same. So for example, like walking the dog for me is at 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. Every single day. That's what we do now. We walk the dog for about an hour. It's kind of important, right? The dog needs it, but we also kind of need to set it up. So now that I have those two spacings, now I can figure out what's before 11, what's between 11 and 4, what's after 4. Um, Clearly, there's dinner making, all that type of stuff. So once you add all those types of activities, then you only have less time, right? I guess the problem is how do I use that less time to actually feel like I'm productive or actually getting somewhere? And then again, it goes to finances. Do I have enough finances to make it through this? If I do, then I can spend part of that routine on just doing things that kill time, like reading or watching movies or catching up on certain things like that. Going for a run every morning. Um, for the entrepreneurs that like are trying to figure out how to get their companies going again, that's kind of tricky because they're on something that doesn't have a deadline. um I think for people who are trying to figure out how to make it through this afterwards, this might be a good time to figure out how to start another business as well. If you started one business, you know how to register, incorporate, you already have accountants, probably you already have a lawyer that helped you with the first one. So the second one is just about coming up with a subject. So that's something we've been doing a lot here as well, is playing on case studies like this company does this and this. It's really intriguing. We really like it. Like, for example, there's this company called The Conquering Events. Um, Basically, you download it. It can be synced with your Fitbit or your Sava app. You work out whatever you want to do. You lift weights. You go running. You go rowing. You go biking, swimming, and then it attaches your Fitbit, or you can enter it manually into this. And basically, you pay $30 per challenge. And as you do the challenge, it's basically like a marathon, but you do it on your own. And then at the end, once it gets completed, they send you a medal in the mail. I thought it was the coolest fucking thing in the world because it's kind of like an event, no people, so you don't need this infrastructure of like 5 or 6 countries set up and all this lawyers and accountants. It has to do with medals. My company, Grappling Industries, has to deal with medals as well, clearly, and you don't need bronze and silver. You only need one medal for a
Yeah.
completely red gold medal. So it was interesting to play with, right? Because we would look at it and how do we make a similar company? How do we make it better? You know, like if we wanted to launch the same business, how would we do it? So we're doing a lot of case studies like that where we're looking at businesses that we like and how can we do something similar or how can we better that idea in a way, like consulting for that business without ever talking to that other business, for example. That's keeping us occupied a lot and keeping us sharp on maybe like future projects. But at the same time, like the problem just is, again, when you're trying to change your routine, that it really goes down to what you want to do. Like there's a lot of people who don't want to start another business, and there's a lot of people who don't want to read and they don't want to watch TV. Well, okay, what do you want to do, man? What do you like to do, and how can we find a way to do it 4 or 5 hours a day? You know, like I know people who like jujitsu so much, like you open a gym. So you get to do jujitsu like 4 to 6 hours a day, if, or even more if you want, you know. It just really is, again, based on that individual and what they like. I can't just tell people to read if they don't know how to read or they don't like to read, right? Or
Yeah,
they don't
100%.
know where to start to read, right?
Yeah.
Clearly, there's a difference between reading financial literacy books and reading sci-fi or
Yeah.
fantasy, really. So
It's really crazy to see how the industry started to pivot, because you're talking about this company that's running events that nobody's at, but they still send you a medal and they're charging a premium for this stuff. I see everybody doing these Zoom classes, and before this, we saw the industry doing a lot more of the DVDs and stuff like that. How do you think this is going to long term affect the overall, and maybe not just jujitsu, but do you think it's going to lead to more people realizing that the online portion is like a necessity, because there's still that old school mentality. Dude, I know businesses that don't even have a website still, Do you think this is going to force people to really go totally virtual and online, or at least really add to that portion of their business?
I actually think the moment that jiu-jitsu gyms can open up and they can run classes in person again, then all the virtual stuff is going to go away. I think like all the virtual Zoom classes go away overnight, instantly. Look, like the Zoom stuff is something they could have been doing the entire time.
Yeah.
They could have been posting an hour every day of like, here's a couple of techniques. If you can't make it to the gym today or tomorrow, here's something to work on. Like Gary Vaynerchuk has been saying from VaynerMedia for a while. He's been saying for a while, you should put out as much content as possible.
Yep.
Because your content is only going to go to about 10% of your followers. So the more and more content you have to release shitloads of content to reach all your followers anyways. And then you have to create a library of content so that the people who want to click and check out the past stuff can see all the other stuff as well. So all these gym owners could have been doing this the entire time. They decided not to. It became a thing now. Someone did it, then everyone copied them, right? Are they going to keep doing it after? Probably not. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that the moment that people can run the in-class gyms again, they're going to think, okay, everyone's just going to do that. No one's going to take Zoom classes. They never found a way to add that to their arsenal, for example.
So do you think the more technologically savvy and the guys who view this for the benefit that it could be will continue to add this to their business? And do you think this could add to an emerging market to a gym who has an online class base as well as an in-person base?
I think the gyms that are trying to develop and emerge themselves like as top tier gyms, like they would have these types of classes online. They would have more content. They want to showcase off to other people what they're providing, right? In the past, before COVID-19, it was just basically like, oh, look at our class. Like, it's like a 2-minute Instagram story or one technique in a blue moon. We're also seeing right now, since so many gyms are providing these classes, that we're also seeing what each gym actually offers in a way. Like it gives you a chance from gym A to look at gym C and be like, oh man, gym C seems to have better instruction than my gym. Like that's become a thing as well, where like it turns out not all gyms were equal in the first place. They were never equal. Not all instructors were equal. Not every instructor cared about their students as much. And there's also gyms right now that are not giving online classes or Zoom classes. They just don't want to touch that either. They're saying like, enjoy this time with your family.
Yeah.
Well, like you did ask me last week to still pay for my membership. The least you could do
Let's put out some content. Yeah.
is like show me how to do some more fucking arm bars, like yeah. And like I think we talked about this last time, and it's been talked by a lot of other people as well. But there was this idea at the beginning that the whole thing was like, well, if I have to close my gym down for 2 weeks, who says I'm going to reopen? And it's like, and then the whole meme thing of please pay for your gym to stay open because it might not be there later.
Yeah.
Dude, that was 6 weeks ago, man.
Yeah.
Like it hits me every single weekend. Every time there's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday that comes up again, I think to myself, that's another weekend that I didn't have tournaments. And it's been a fucking while now. So if the gym owners were saying they couldn't stay open after 2 weeks, then you can imagine after 6 weeks that there's more and more that clearly aren't going to open. Then again, I think that for every jiu-jitsu gym that closes, it will be replaced by another one. The same thing with restaurants and bars. Like if you drive by an outdoor mall and you see that restaurant that's not there anymore after COVID, there'll be a new restaurant there. I think what sucks is that there was someone ruined in that change. There was someone who had a restaurant who might have been doing good, and then this destroyed them. So although they got replaced by someone else, which is good that someone else has come up and tried to lift up that local regional economy, then again, someone got ruined. That's kind of what sucks. And we're going to see that in jiu-jitsu. We've
Yeah,
already
I
seen it in
totally
jiu-jitsu. There's been jiu-jitsu gyms, if you've been paying attention on Facebook, that have shut down already.
Yeah. And I mean, from a totally Darwinian standpoint, both business and, in life itself, like this is culling the herd, and it sucks to see it because we're friends with these people. They're in our community, but people die, businesses go under because there was a weakness, and whether it was the financial literacy side of a business or a weakened immune system from the human side, like this is part of life, and this is just a reset button. So, I mean, I'm kind of hopeful coming out of this that we're going to see a stronger base of the people that are left over, and that the new businesses that come in are going to have to come up to that level,
No, I agree with you. I mean, there's a lot of gyms, and we don't know what's happening in those gyms. We don't see their books. We don't know their finances. Some of these businesses might not have reserves because the owner of the business took too much out as a salary. That's also something that happens. Some of these gyms were just hobbies, to be honest. Like they didn't have enough money to pay the owner of the gym. So the owner of the gym had to have a real job during the day so they could run this gym at night. Or how many gyms do we see that are basically rented mat space out of a karate gym as well? A lot of these people technically should never have had a gym in the first place, but they did, and I respect that for sure. You have to start somewhere. Clearly, you have to start somewhere, but at the same time, like they're always saying on Shark Tank, there's a difference between an actual business and a hobby. If after like 3 to 5 years you haven't actually made any money and it can't support you for focusing on it 100%, it's probably not a business. It's probably a hobby. And then again, most businesses go under before 5 years, and a lot of jiu-jitsu gyms are still less than 5 years old. So it's bound to happen that we see them crash, we see them close. I think it's a very big possibility that we see at least again like 25 to 40% of. I would say 40% is too high. Actually, I would say like 20 to 25% of gyms closing.
Man, I really see it at 40%. I really think so.
Yeah, that would be like half the gyms in the world almost closing, but it's very possible. That's the thing. Like, yeah, it's very possible. Some gyms. There's a lot of gyms that only have like 20 to 30 members, right? Like whenever we think of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gyms, I know it's easy to think that some gyms have 100 to like 500 members, and there's a lot of gyms that do have that. But the gyms that have like 20 to 30 members, and it's a very small, like apartment-sized gym. Yeah, those are probably not coming back right now.
Yeah, probably not. So, Dave, you got something positive you want to end on?
Positive to end on, man. Oh man, I didn't prepare a positive.
I know, me neither. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm just like, oh shit, man, this is like getting pretty heavy and dark.
Last time I thought about at the end, I've been like the first round of all the podcasts I did, I was really pitching the suicide awareness, for example.
Yeah.
And like we're actually seeing that come true now. Suicide rates have increased. I think in Tennessee, suicide rates have actually gone through the roof.
I wouldn't be surprised. Tennessee's always had a pretty high suicide rate. I mean, it's one of those places, it's the cheapest place to live in the U.S., and it has a very unique culture. Let's just put it that way,
No, for sure. I would want to touch on that again. I guess one thing I want to touch on right now is like I think most people just need a break from social media.
Yeah.
I think people are really like I think like last week my fiance came into the room and she was like, "Oh, did you read this post one of your friends made on Facebook?" And I read it, and it was like he was talking about how hard of a time he was having with his wife and how they haven't made out in a while. Like I haven't made out with my wife in like 3
I don't
months.
understand people that post that shit on there.
But that's my point. Like people are losing a grip, like they find like social media is like a place they go out and they say whatever they want, and they think they're just talking to their friends, and it's my page. I get to say what I want. If you don't like it, leave. Like I think most people need to take a break. from social media. Like I'm one of those people, I will get rid of Facebook and Instagram the day I don't have Grappling Industries anymore.
Yeah.
You know, like the only reason I'm on this stuff is that I run a page. Like Grappling Industries has 125,000 likes, and like group has like 14,000 people in it. If it wasn't for these two things, I wouldn't have social media, man. I'm not a scroller. When I was a scroller, I end up like reading stuff I don't like, and then again, it's like stuff like this, you know, it's always like negativity. Like last time I was on social media, it's like now conspiracy theories are higher than ever, right? Like
It's
5G
crazy.
towers.
Yeah.
Bill Gates wants to put chips in everyone. Man, Bill Gates is like a fucking saint to the humans. Like for a guy that has that much money to spend that much time actually trying to better the world for others, it's kind of crazy to see people putting him down. But then again, like it's just conspiracy theory as a conspiracy theory, or it's like, oh, COVID is just the flu, or this or that, or the government sucks, or this or that. It's just like, man, if I don't go on social media during the day, I don't have to read all this shit. It's just that simple. And
Yeah.
you'll be a lot less stressed without reading all this type of garbage. Because then you won't be as angry when Jill says this about you, or Eric says this about you, or counters your opinion, you know? I feel like a lot of people, they have to get into these debates on social media to have some type of meaning right now. Um, I don't really see what it offers them. Like Gordon Ryan, for example, he loves to be a troll, right? He loves to go online, and if you challenge him, he loves to troll you back, right? I'm just not down with it, man.
Yeah.
It got boring, man. It's so boring, and especially right now, it's just like everyone thinks they're an expert. Like we were saying earlier, everyone thinks they're an expert. Um, since like there's an option on your Facebook if you go down on the where there's like the three lines. If you go down, there's an option where it says how much time you spent on Facebook today. And it shows you every day how much time you spend on Facebook. You can put a choice in there. You have an option to put the number of minutes you want to spend on Facebook a day. So when I first found out about this option, I was at an hour and a half a day spent on Facebook. I was like, oh, fuck that, man. So I got that down to 45 minutes. I put 45 minutes in. Now it tells me, oh, you spent 45 minutes on Facebook. Oh, fuck. That's still too much in my mind. I've got the number down to about 25 minutes. It's more than enough, you know,
Yeah.
to read what's serious and or read something that you might want to. I mean, most of us are just scrolling on social media because it's part of our routine. Like none of us ask ourselves, why do we want to know what this person says? I don't. I know. You know, I think it'll make a lot of people less stressed if they don't read or spend as much time on social media. They get a social media detox, as it's called.
Detox from social media. I'd say I know something I do that every week makes me happy is every Friday I have a conference call with my students. We just sit there and we just talk, because I think that's one of the biggest things that is missing because jujitsu is where people go to make friends and like it becomes a family. You lose that contact every day. I think at least once a week, being able to set that up and sit down and talk to your friends and family and like-minded people. Like we have a Zoom meeting with our family probably once, twice a week too. I
Yep.
think that's finding ways to stay connected during all this is probably another good thing to do as well.
This is like probably the best time ever to like call your family members, call
Yeah.
your parents or call your siblings, like check up on them. You know, the stuff they've always asked us to do, I guess. I mean, this is a
Yeah.
good time to do that stuff. If you're not going to call your parents during the quarantine, when the fuck are you going to call them?
Yeah. I know I've been spending a lot more time on the phone with my grandparent or my grandpa now talking to him and just talking for 30 minutes to an hour at a time just because I didn't have time to do that before. I'd call him when I could, but a couple times a week now it's good to check in, especially on those elderly members of your family that are really stuck. Like we're complaining, like we're young and healthy. Like imagine what it's like with these older people that are afraid to leave their home.
Oh man, like if I was 70 right now, it'd be like, I don't know what I would be complaining about. It would be completely different, clearly.
Yeah, 100%.
And then again, like it's hard to say when we're both 70, like will we still be like as invested in jiu-jitsu, as engaged in jiu-jitsu, and like how will we feel about jiu-jitsu at that point,
I think we're both gonna be pretty pissed off and done with them. Like, I go back and forth every day between like, man, fuck it, fuck this entire community, and like, okay, no, I can do something here to help them.
COVID has really helped me work on my exit strategy.
Yeah, it gets you thinking.
Looking
All
for
right, Dave.
buyers. Looking for
Yeah.
buyers during COVID.
Dave, anything else you want to say before I let you go?
Oh no, just be nice to each other, man.
Yeah, be nice to each other, check in on each other. I like it. All right, man, we're gonna go ahead and end this now.